Welcome to the Homegrown Podcast. I'm your host, Joey Haselmayer. Continuing the man series, I've got notes written down here of how to intro this particular guest because there's bigger words involved. So forgive me as I look at my phone as I read some of this. Craig McCloskey. We've had Craig on. McCloskey, am I saying that
That's right?
Right on. Okay. We had Craig on before with Elizabeth. So if you want to hear a more professional episode of Craig, go check that one out. If you want to bro out with me and Craig, this is the one for you. Craig has a degree in nutrition and dietetics. He has a focus in a word I'm going to attempt called kinesiology.
That's it.
Oh man, dude, we're killing it. A master certified health coach and a board certified holistic nutrition, amongst a number of other things. Craig is leading the charge on a content creation globally for ancestral supplements, a brand that Elizabeth and I use every day. But man, Craig, super stoked to have you on. Talk about all things men, fitness, health. Thanks for being here, dude.
I've been looking forward to this. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I selfishly just want to get to know you a little bit better. Yeah. And so would love to jump in and start out by asking about like what it was like for you growing up, where you grew up. And then I want to jump into some of like your education.
Yeah. So, growing up, I grew up in central Pennsylvania, a relatively not a small town. It was like 40 or 50,000 people, Altoona, PA. So it's a lot of farmland, mountainside, valleys, 20, 30 minutes away from Penn State, which is where I went to school. But growing up, like, I don't know if I mentioned this on the last podcast we were in, but I was born to teenage parents. My parents were, my mom was like 15, my dad was 16 and super young. Like they were obviously kids still themselves. And I'm at the same age. My dad and my stepmom now have my younger brother and they had him later. And I'm 32 and my brother just turned 16 and we're the same age. My brother and I are the same age. My dad and I are apart. So I'm thinking like, how could I have a kid that's 16 years old like my brother? And it's just like crazy to me. That's the kind of the household that I grew up in.
When you were growing up, did you know, like, was it apparent to you that your parents were younger?
It was just my normal. That's all I knew, right? So like I was primarily raised by my mom's parents, my grandparents on that side. And so my dad and my mom never stayed together. So like they were in and out of relationships. My mom would bring different guys home and usually not the best kind of guys. And so that was kind of just the household that I was in, like super loving. Like my grandparents, like they spoil their grandkids, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the household that I was in. But I think I mentioned this on the last podcast, but it wasn't necessarily the healthiest because my grandparents smoked a ton inside the house and I was constantly sick from ear infections and just missing school. But like on the flip side of that, like I said, like super loving and just like I saw the end of this both spectrums of like a super loving household, like anything I wanted, but I also saw like a certain level of abuse with like the guys that my mom brought home. Yeah. And so I had this like really like weird, just kind of like perception of the world. It's like super loving, but it also can be kind of violent at times too.
No, I'm like seeing that play out in my head a little bit. And we don't have as extreme of a situation, but my and Elizabeth's oldest child is 13. Yeah. And I am 31, almost 32. And Elizabeth is 33. 33. And it's funny because I'll ask her sometimes. And that's why I asked, right? Yeah. I'd be like, do you realize your parents are like super cool because we're not, like older? And she'll look at us and she's like, what are you talking about? Like, you guys are old and weird. Like, get out of here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I think she has a similar feeling that you did in the sense that it's like, hey, I have loving parents and this is my life and I don't know anything different. But I do feel it and notice it sometimes when I go out in public. And I picked up our oldest from the roller rink recently. Right? I walk in there to pick her up. And I'm walking in there. I'm like, dude, I feel I see people here that are probably 17, 18, 19 years old at the roller rink. And I imagine a lot of people are like, seem like, why is Sophie's brother coming to pick her up from anyhow. I
would go out with my stepmom when I was like 16 and like go get groceries. And like people thought, because she was like, what was she, 31 or 30, something like that. And people thought like we were to like, it was just like a weird dynamic kind of growing up. And we would get it so often. So it's just funny.
So funny, especially if he looks really young, you know what I'm saying? And I do have if I don't leave the beard growing, I look like I'm 11. So I gotta keep it, man. I gotta keep it.
Yeah.
Hey, so growing up, what kind of hobbies did you have? You play any sports, anything like that?
Yeah, I loved playing just about every sport. Baseball was like my main sport. I went into college, played college baseball, and I was a college swimmer. And oddly enough, I didn't swim until I was in high school, but I went to a branch campus at Penn State, and then I played sports there. But growing up, I tried to play as many sports as I could. I didn't take into like instruments that much. I just like being active. I didn't do a ton else. I did a little bit of art, just kind of like on the side. Like I was into anime when I was like real young, like 10, 12, like the Dragon Ball Z,
Oh,
Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, all that fun stuff.
100%.
And I like to draw, like sketch certain things, but that kind of faded away and sports just really kind of took over. And that was like most of my life.
I didn't get heavy into anime, but Dragon Ball Z, 100%. It was
Yeah.
like the show. And I
Yeah.
remember watching it like on Mondays at 7, and I was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
so stoked.
Yeah.
And I have very fond memories of Dragon Ball Z. There's some people that get into anime like heavy, and there's some
Oh,
really it's a pretty deep rabbit trail, and I'm definitely not there. But Dragon Ball Z, if you haven't watched it, maybe, I don't know if it stands the test of time or not, but it was awesome. It was just like dudes fighting each other and
it
being
was
in really
cool.
good shape, and it was almost like the health influencer of today, right? But like in cartoon form for us
Yeah.
kids. And so I wanted to be jacked and go, Super Saiyan. But it is
It
what it
was
is.
awesome.
So tons of sports, education. Like when you were walking into college at this point, so you're really active. You're staying fit. You're playing a lot of sports. Is that kind of what led you? I think I remember us talking about this before. Is that kind of what
Yeah.
inspired you to take nutrition and dietetics? Like, how did you get there?
Going into I started summer classes. Well, so backwards a little bit. I went into the Air Force right after high school. Like I had some
Oh,
baseball scholarships lined up in high school, but I don't know. Like I really just wanted to be in the military and join the Air Force. And so I went to basic training on my 19th birthday, December 6th, which my 32nd birthday just passed. And I was 19, went to the Air Force, and then I ended up getting out of the Air Force, like an honorable discharge due to medical issues shortly after. And so then I spent like another, several months just kind of figuring out my life. Like, do I want to go play sports in college? Do I just want to join the workforce like my dad did? What do I want to do? I was 20 and I was like, man, like, I don't even know what I want to do. And so I thought about nursing. Like when I went to college, I ultimately decided just to commute to Penn State. And I was like, do I do nursing? I knew I liked the health field, just being in sports. I was like, I like health in general, sciences. That's what I was good at. And so I went in undecided and I started taking just like prerequisites in the health field, just hoping something would align. And I think it was my sophomore, I think it was the fall semester of my freshman year, like the very first semester I was there. I think I had a nutrition class, and that's kind of what clicked for me. I was like, I like nutrition. I'm playing sports right now. And then I understood how nutrition like impacted me physically. And I saw results when I was applying some of the things I was learning. And so I just was like, let's do this. Like I like learning about this. Let's do that. But then that later that year, February of 2015, that's when my uncle had passed away. We talked about that, I think, on the previous podcast.
mm-hmm.
Heart attack, super young, 43 years young. And he just, and for me, like nutrition was kind of that thing. Like I associated, like it was a lot, probably because of his diet and stress and lifestyle. And that's really what led me to like being on the path that I'm on. So not only was I playing sports and I saw the nutritional value there, but like also because I had that personal experience in my own life. And so that was really early on in my college career.
I played college sports too. I played soccer.
Okay.
I try to. I'm trying to learn how to play baseball now. My in-laws are huge baseball fans,
Yeah.
and if I want to stay a part of their family, I'm probably gonna have to get good at it. But the crazy thing about sports for men, at least, that's the best thing I can speak to, is
Mm-hmm.
when you want to perform your best and you feel that competitive energy and like stress, which I think is very
Yeah.
healthy for guys,
Yeah.
having that competitive stress. It was in that moment that I was capable of mentally like unlocking this ownership of my health and fitness.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how else to explain it. I remember, again, this is going to sound hilarious, but like I'm playing soccer through high school, and then I have the opportunity to play in college, and all of a sudden I'm like, I'm on scholarship, like I'm making money essentially, right, to
Yeah.
play soccer. and the demand of that sport was completely different than like high school sports. It was just completely different. And I remember thinking like, I can't drink soda. Like I can't do that. I can't eat all these chips and Flamin' Hot Cheetos were like my jam, right? I can't eat this stuff before practice or after practice or before a game. Like it immediately became apparent to me how I would feel and the benefits of being extra hydrated. And we had a nutritionist for our team that would give us some basic like information, but they would say things like, hey, after a game, eat a bunch of pizza, right? That's kind of what they would say. And
carb up.
Yeah, exactly. And after a game, or like a two or three a day, they would bring in like chocolate milk and stuff like that. That was kind of what we were given. But even that like minor amount of like intentionality of like that was out of my current like hurtling through space normal.
Right.
It really changed the way I think about it. Now what you had that I didn't have is like a major event that also kind of propelled me forward. And so I think it took me a little bit longer, right? Because like I had an idea of how to perform, but then it was like, if I wasn't training for something, it didn't really matter because I wasn't thinking about the kind of long-term impact of my choices. It was just, hey, I have this short-term goal of perform well. And then it's like, yeah, after the game, eat pizza, Flamin' Hot Cheetos, drink Mountain Dew, whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny because like we didn't really have many nutritionists there as well. So we were just kind of learning on the go. And, we would be told to carb up before our swim meets and we would go out as a team like every Friday night and we would go to the Olive Garden and just like devour like an entire plate of pasta. And I'm like, yeah, because this is what we did in high school too, is like we carved up, like we carb loaded. And looking back, like that's so ridiculous to think that we did that. And I was a little fluffy myself. Like I was swimming 3 hours a day, like 5-6 days a week. And like, how was I like still a little inflamed, like looking back at myself? And it's because like after practices, we would go to the calf and we would get these, I forget what they were called, but basically it was like this buffalo chicken sandwich melt. And it was like the biggest, meatiest thing and terrible. I mean, it was awesome, but we would just eat one of those. And then I was still hungry. Like I'd eat so much food and you could never feel full because we're being so active. But like you said, like it just, I don't know, eventually clicked for me. Like later, like maybe the next year, I think it was the summer after my freshman year, my then girlfriend, she's my now wife. We've been together almost 11 years now. And we did the Insanity, like the Ashanti program. And we saw serious results. Like I saw definition of my abs, my performance skyrocketed because I was doing all these like hit style workouts, and we really dialed in our nutrition. And I started doing these green smoothies that I'd never done before. And it was terrible. Like she still jokes about it today, like how gross they were. Cause like it was like shards of spinach, just gross, like almond milk. And we're past that kind of phase of our lives now. But like we were doing all these like gross, things that were new to us, going to the health food store, just learning about all these superfoods. But before then, for a couple of years, we were really just like eating whatever we wanted and didn't really understand much.
It's also tough when you're like younger and budgets and there's definitely some conditioning that occurs contextually for people. I remember when Elizabeth and I first got married, we had an apartment. You're paying for childcare, apartment, you're paying for like groceries. And it's like when you go to the grocery store, like, what are you thinking? Like, what's the first thing on your brain? And it's like, man, the biggest stress in our life right now is money. And so going in there and we didn't know. And I was talking with Jason recently, and we were talking about this idea of like gateways, like into health food and intentional living, right? So money can obviously be a barrier and it also can be an enabler, I think. But you're a very interesting case in that you entered into the health food, intentional living, holistic living space pre-marriage because Jason and I determined, we were like, man, one of the biggest gateways for men today to get into this real food space, intentional living, holistic living, crunchy, whatever you want to call it, is your spouse. And that this is not the case for you. And so, I'm curious, like, what was the like pivotal gateway to it? You had some experience, of course, but like, what were like the physical, like, did you start with a certain kind of food? Was it fitness? Like, what was it?
For me, it was my uncle that kind of just led me to like doing more research, and it was actually a podcast. So, it was the Model Health Show by Sean Stevenson. And I ended up working for him for 4 years, but I found out about his podcast like the very first year he launched it. I want to say this is 2014. So after my uncle had passed, I'm sitting in class, being a great college student on my phone, just scrolling Instagram, and a mutual friend like had shared about his podcast, and I listened to it, and I just fell in love with this side of health that I never heard before. Like I was sitting in my college classes, like learning that kind of side of health, but then I was listening to many different podcasts, reading all these books. Like I didn't hear about all these experts before in podcasts. And I was like, I didn't know air quality. I didn't know water quality. I didn't know that there was like a holistic kind of space out there. Right. And so that kind of led me to doing a ton more research, and then really just wanting to go spend money I didn't have, like loan money, just whatever money that I was getting in college, spending it at the health food store, spending it on books. Because I wanted to see how good I could make myself at my athletic endeavors. I wanted to figure out, just like my uncle, like what was going on with him. But I just really loved just learning about that. And I think having that nutrition class my freshman year, also hearing kind of mentors, if you will, like on podcasts and reading these books, I just fell in love with it. And like you said, like that was before marriage. That was before like I was together. I had my girlfriend, and she was loving it too. Like, so we kind of did this together throughout college. Yeah. But as you might be able to imagine, like learning one thing in college and then learning what I'm learning outside of my college, they kind of conflicted. But then also I'm trying to like navigate my way through college life, and I have roommates that are partiers. I have all this like weird stuff going on, and I would be that weird black sheep kid that like said no to parties, that drank like whatever green juices, and I ordered all these weird supplements, and they're ordering Natty Light and all this stuff, and I'm like, I don't care. Like at first maybe I cared what people thought about me, but after a while, like I was like, I just like who I'm becoming, and I really didn't care what other people thought of me. And still today, like it's kind of similar. Like I'm trying to surround myself with more like-minded people like yourself, but that's how it was for most of college.
That's so cool. I mean, you got into this early, and I believe like that. Like today, it's a lot more. It's becoming more mainstream, especially with bigger influencers coming around and
social media.
It's just crazy. But back then, yeah, that would have been weird. I'm sure there was people that were like, this guy is like a nutter. Like he's like the hipster of health. And, you might as well have had dreadlocks, you know what I mean? And like
toe shoes. Like people are like, what are those? I was like, they're my toe shoes.
I could totally see that. So were you kind of the gateway for your wife then? And what's your wife's name? Remind me.
Bethany.
So you and Bethany are dating for like, it sounds like a very long
10
time.
years.
10 years.
We got married on our 10-year dating anniversary this past May.
No way.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
That you'll never forget your anniversary. At least
nope.
I don't think you will.
One date to remember.
There you go. That's awesome. So when you guys were dating, were you kind of exploring this stuff and like bringing it back to her and saying, hey, here's what I'm doing?
A little bit. I want to say like we were definitely in it together, but I was definitely, I think, the one that was like, she's so smart, and she would go to class. I would be the one that would skip class so I could do outside research. Like I'm like, what I'm learning here in my college class, like this is really irritating to me. Seed oils, whatever. I'm going to skip class, not to party, but I'm going to read a book that I really like learning because it's like newer, updated information. And so we would kind of teach each other. We would take these trips together. We would go to ACSM conferences, American College of Sports Medicine, through our, what you said earlier, kinesiology. We would go to live podcast events together. So we were really learning this together and really looking back, like growing up together, because she was 18, I was 20, 19, 21. So we were right there growing up together, learning this. But yeah, I was definitely probably the one that was a little bit more nerded out in this stuff, if you will.
I dig it. I mean, that's not the normal for the at least from what I've seen.
No.
And that's kind of like something I want to understand more is why do you think more men, at least around me, okay, so there might be some men that are listening to this right now that are like, yo, this is my life too. And maybe we're just like a quiet but like large community. But like I don't hear much about the male community that is leading the charge towards health and wellness and fitness, especially for their families or for themselves.
Yeah, I don't know if it has to do with like the woman of the house is really just kind of like the housekeeper, like making sure everything is like good. And typically, I mean, at Ancestral Supplements, the company I work for, you know, a large part of who our target audience is like the crunchy mom that really runs the household, that's like taking care of the kids. And, you know, cause she's the one that's going out and buying the supplements. She's the one that's going out and maybe placing the grocery order, which is this case here with my wife. She's a dietitian. So, you know, she knows her stuff, and it's, but I don't know, like it's maybe, I don't know what it stems from just culturally. Cause like maybe you look at like ancestrally, like men are the ones that would go out and hunt, and they would come back, and the woman might have foraged from tubers if you look at the Hadza. But like culturally, I don't know. I mean, in our culture today, men, it just isn't apparent that we are it maybe is weird if you're the crunchy dad kind of thing, you know. But I think it's becoming a little bit more and more popular and acceptable, if you will.
Yeah. I also wonder if there's like a sense of a lack of masculinity or something. Again, I'm speculating here, but of just feeling less in control, or less, it's almost like manly in some capacity to not care. I don't know. I feel like it's the opposite personally. I'm like, I want to be, like you said, I want to be able to, I want to be a high performer. And I think that there's so many aspects in life that you have to consider in order to be a high performer. And, you know, the term, and again, I want to hear your thoughts on this term, but like the phrase, you know, you can't outwork a bad diet, right?
Yeah.
Always sticks with me, because I'm like, I'm training towards, you know, these goals and these objectives, and I want to be able to do this. And, you know, when this group of guys calls me up and says, hey, we want to go get a run in, or I want to get a workout in, or I even think about my kids growing up and wanting to be active with me, go hunting with me, this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I just want to be a high performing, high capable, experience life, be healthy, have longevity, have high energy, be as effective as I can in business, in family, just in all areas of life. And this can't outwork a bad diet. What does that mean to you?
I feel like I live that. Like, you know, I grew up and I was eating the standard American diet. Like when I was raised by my grandparents, like I would eat McDonald's like 3 days out of the week. You know, it was a lot. And then, you know, I was very active. So in some ways, like I feel like I was able to mitigate some of the effects that the ultra processed foods I was eating was having on me. But like, if I have like something fried in seed oils, like something ultra processed, like Oreos, which I don't have very often, just because that's not what we bring into our home. And, you know, but if I have something like that, like I feel the effects of it pretty instantly. Like I'll get like, I won't sleep as well. Like I'll sleep hot. I'll get indigestion. I'll have gut issues, just because I'm so in tune with how I'm feeling. But like, yeah, I feel like it really kind of negates, like if you're trying to work out and you're still eating all these ultra processed foods that are like very hyper palatable, that are just causing you to overeat, it's really kind of negating, you can't really outwork that in a lot of ways.
You know what? That feeling you just made me think of, that you're talking about, like you eat an Oreo or whatever. I feel that way. So with alcohol, years ago, I decided I wanted to run a marathon, because I have to have something to like push towards, right?
Yeah, same.
So I'm trained to run a marathon, and in the midst of that decision, I was like, similar. I mean, dude, rewind back to my college days, right? I was like, hey, I want to be a good soccer player. I'm dropping soda, right? Well, I wasn't drinking a whole lot of alcohol back then, but that was also kind of probably lumped into that mix. Well, as an adult and already leaning heavily into the crunchy space, man, you couldn't like cattle prod me into drinking a Mountain Dew, right? It's just not going to happen. But like, I was drinking alcohol, right? And whether it be bourbon, and I was attempting to go for cleaner things, right? We're, Elizabeth and I are buying like organic wines from that are pesticide free, and you know, she's looking at all this stuff. Again, I'm not an expert in healthy alcohol choices, and I'm also not necessarily sure that there are any. We'll get to that, but so I cut out alcohol, right? And I didn't drink for, I don't know, couple years, because I just kept training, and I ran the marathon, was successful, and then I was like, I feel pretty good. And also I kind of lost the desire, like, you know, spoiler alert, like the sunrise is still pretty awesome without a beer, right? Or without or sunset, sorry. Hopefully not the sunrise, but like you can still have fun with your friends. Like I would just drink a sparkling water and put it in the same cup they're drinking, and no one knows, and it doesn't really even matter.
That's
and this holiday season, recently, I would like have a glass of wine, right? And I would like wake up in the middle of the night just like sweating. And again, not like hammered, like a
Yeah.
glass of wine. And I would like wake up kind of like sweating and like hot, like hard time sleeping, like you said. And I'm like, my body is processing this,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel kind of awful.
Yeah.
Any thoughts to? I mean, no shame to anybody that drinks alcohol. I'm not like anti, but just curious what you think. What you think.
Yeah, that happens to me all with wine, especially. And I love wine. Like I didn't always love it, but we went to Italy and drank some wine, and I was like, I actually kind of like this. But you feel the effects, if you have too much, or everybody's a little different. But to what you're saying, I mean, if I'm eating a little bit of junk, ultra processed food, a little alcohol, for me, I know I'm not as inclined to do my workouts if I'm feeling a little off. I'm more likely to maybe skip a workout or just let myself slip a little bit. So if I know my kind of gateway choices could lead to other unhealthy choices. So for me, it's better to just not do those things to begin with. Easier said than done a lot of times.
100%.
So I think that's why it's like important for us to like choose what we can bring into our home, because we can control this environment here. We can't control all the like what's going on outside of our home. Society's not really creating a good structure for us. It's just a free for all of like food choices and sedentary lives. So we can really control what's going on in our home, but to like what you're saying, like the alcohol really can affect you. And if you're like, you have one drink or two drinks, and I might like during the holiday season, right? Like I'm not going out and I'm not drinking a 6-pack a night, like, but if so yeah, that's
I love that, and I think that what you said makes total sense to me. And really, if I were to kind of like articulate it just a little bit differently, it's for me to understand it. And correct me if I'm wrong,
yeah.
but man, just being aware of the potential detriments of fun and or ceremonial or exciting or like, man, it's a holiday season, right? I'm gonna sit down Thanksgiving, I had a glass of wine, right? So it's like, if you're like this holiday season going to drink alcohol, just being aware of the potential detriments of that decision, whether it's Oreos, whether it's alcohol of some form, whether it's cake at a birthday party.
Yeah.
There's just like this understanding of being aware of what you're eating. Having that education can kind of give you some freedom, because you can say, hey, you know what, I can have this glass of wine, but like I know I'm having this, I know what it's going to kind of do to me. And tomorrow, like we're working out, or maybe tomorrow it's like I know what I'm doing tomorrow already, and I'm okay with kind of the situation that I'm in, right? It's like at least you're making a strategic decision rather than
Mm-hmm.
hurtling through space and complaining about how you have low energy and you can't make it. And with men, and I've heard this, I'm curious like what you think about it, but like the impact that alcohol can have on testosterone.
Mm.
You have any insight there?
Yeah, I mean, beer is like one of the things that's like a testosterone killer. I mean, just
Really?
like all the estrogen, and it's a very big, so I mean, that's like kind of like a thing in my family is like beer drinking is, and I think that's a thing in like a lot of families, like guys in particular. Like, there's so much marketing with all the beer out there, but I think that's a big thing. So I've always kind of advocated, if you are going to drink alcohol, like maybe some of these more, I guess like refined, like tequilas, like a high quality tequila or a gin or something like that. They're better options because it's not coming with all the additives and like the grains in the beer. But yeah, beer in particular is definitely like a testosterone killer.
Really? So beer specifically?
Yeah. And I'm
Okay.
sure there's better options out there, but I mean, there's a reason that people call it the beer belly, right? It's just like, overweight, obesity is kind of a sign that in guys, like you probably got lower testosterone, less muscle mass. Yeah. So avoiding, I don't want to say avoiding, but just being mindful and, considering what the negative side effects are of these things.
No kidding. And you said, what was it within beer that's causing that?
I think it's the way the alcohol is produced from the grain. There's estrogen in there,
Oh,
and it's
really?
yeah,
So kind of like bringing that extra estrogen into my body is
yeah.
suppressing, or is it like how, like maybe we don't know the exact science of
I
it,
don't know
but
the exact mechanisms behind it. I just know that when you're drinking beer in particular, like yeah, it can be a really big testosterone killer. Alcohol in general, because the way you break it down into the acetaldehyde, all that. I mean, that's what gives you like maybe like a headache or things like that. But like all the extra additives in there obviously aren't good. But beer's a pretty rough one.
what are some of the negative impact or effects you would notice for maybe men listening of I'm drinking beer on a regular basis, or maybe like let's say I have low testosterone. What would I notice as a result of that? What would that do to me?
I mean, so many different things. I mean, it can back to your sleep quality, muscle. I mean, as we age, we're already losing a little bit of muscle mass. Like, what is it, like a percent every year, something like that, from age 30 on. So that's us, and we're trying to mitigate that.
Mm,
But lower testosterone, I mean, you're talking like mental health. You
wow.
probably lose your patience a little bit more. Lower sex drive, of course. A lot of hair, like things like that,
No
like your
kidding.
hair falling out, male pattern baldness, a lot of different things.
So beer. Any other things coming to mind that would? I mean, just while we're on the topic of testosterone dampening things that may be naturally occurring in someone's diet.
Things that lower testosterone.
Uh huh.
Yeah. Well, in diet, like I want to say like sleep is probably the number one thing. So if you're
Yeah.
not getting good sleep and you're highly stressed, which is very easily to do in our culture,
Yeah.
like that's like the number one thing that's gonna lower your testosterone. Also, not lifting heavy things, like just working a sedentary desk job, like that's a number one thing, because getting good sleep and lifting heavy things is probably the number one way to boost your testosterone.
Okay.
But in terms of diet, yeah, I mean, soy based products. I'm a fan of like fermented soy products, but like our ancestors weren't eating like soy dogs and soy burgers and soy milk.
Yeah.
But a lot of these soy based products have xenoestrogens, like foreign estrogens, and they are essentially mimicking like our own estrogen. So uh, it's people say like dairy, like milk has a ton of estrogen in it, but the amount of estrogen in a glass of milk is so low. It's ridiculously low in estrogen. It's like just a couple, um, it's just a little bit. Whereas, like soy milk can have like hundreds of thousands of like nanograms of estrogen, and it's like not even comparable. So things like that, like kind of like a plant-based approach, whereas like maybe eating a little bit more animal-based approach of meats, and like a nice like whole food based diet that's full of animal foods, because egg yolks, raw dairy, red meats, these are going to contain testosterone boosting nutrients, that are like vitamin D that you can also get from the sun, vitamin B12, like B vitamins, vitamin A. All these are like sex hormone boosting nutrients. So doing that and not avoiding these things because we were told they're bad for us, right?
Dude, that is so good to know. So soy, I didn't know about soy. I
Yeah.
had heard about alcohol, but boiling it down more specifically to beer also helps. And wine, you would say like really clean wine would be a little bit more in the clear there. Again, we could probably have a back and forth on alcohol, whether it be should we or should we not. But let's say we're going to drink alcohol. Let's
Yeah.
let's let's say that um, the top choices you mentioned were like higher, like cleaner. It sounds like a gin or a
Mhm.
refined tequila. What about like a bourbon? Anything about a bourbon?
It's not as refined down, so there's still going to be traces of that grain in there, right? Like I know
Mm.
my father-in-law is big into bourbon and whiskey, and he's tried to get me into it. And I've gotten some Christmas presents in the past that's bourbon, and I'm like, I just don't have the taste for it.
Yeah,
I don't know if I want to. It's just not enjoyable to me. Maybe in the future, but I don't know if I want to put in all those miles to get there.
so funny.
Um, but yeah, I mean, like more of like the refined, so there's not as many additives in it, and it's really just kind of straight
Got it.
alcohol. So your body's not trying to process everything that's coming along with it. For me, I mean, if I'm having some sort of drink during the holiday season, like I like a gin and tonic, like a sugar-free tonic water with like a splash of lime. Um, what's the one that comes in like a copper mug? I always
Oh,
forget.
mule.
A Moscow Mule,
Yeah,
right? So a little bit of that with like ginger, like high quality ginger,
yeah.
and it's the cranberries on top. So something like that. I know my some of my family members have even like switched from beer to drinking maybe a seltzer because
Hmm.
it's not as heavy and calorically dense, I guess you could say. So even doing that might be a little bit better of an alternative, but I think just switching to like a higher quality liquor, if you will.
And if you think about it, right, you're eliminating ingredients. If you have
Yeah.
gin and you can put in like a soda water and lime, I mean, again, not to like promote that as like the number one drink, but
Right.
at least you know what's in there and where it came from, where it originated, and it's the simpler it can be, typically. means that your body may have an easier time digesting and metabolizing what's going on there.
Yep.
This idea of testosterone, though, I feel like it's talked about a lot, and people have a hard time understanding whether or not, like, how, like, one, should it be something I focus on? How important is it? And I think you made some great points of muscle mass loss from starting at the age of 30, which I did not know that. Now I do. And now I'm going to go, hit the gym even harder today. Right. But so as we're looking to combat that, right,
Yeah.
that muscle loss, obviously we want to work out. We want to nutritionally eat the right kind of macronutrient balanced, diet, right, to kind of build back muscle. Is it a losing battle? Is there anything we can do to kind of defend ourselves against that? Or is it just like, we're going to be losing?
No, I mean, like looking at like in our modern culture, you can look at the science, but you can also look at like cultures that like the Hadza. When you look at some of the older individuals in their tribe that live in Tanzania in Africa, they're not like bodybuilder size, but they're able to utilize like every muscle fiber in their being. They're able to pull back like a 70-pound, whatever their poundage bow is. They're not measuring the weight, but I've seen videos of the relatively thin Hadza men pull back the bow and they're able to shoot spot on. And then you look at maybe some guys that go to visit, they're not able to pull, they're muscular guys, they're not able to pull it back. It's like, how are they able to do that? Well, they're just using their muscles every day in ways. So they're not benching 300 pounds. They're not squatting 400 pounds. They're just moving their body. They're doing daily work that humans are just kind of designed to do. So if you're asking like how to preserve like muscle mass as we age, like a loss of muscle mass is normal, like as we age, but like you can really delay that as much as you really can just by moving every day, not being sedentary, making sure you're getting in enough high quality protein, whether that's food or a supplement, but just really just making sure that you're just using your muscles. If you don't use it, you lose it, right?
Mm-hmm. I dig that. So being physically active and trying to maintain the lifestyle you want to keep is one of the best ways to do that. So if you want to be lifting in the gym for a really long time, well, just keep lifting in the gym, right? And that will also probably benefit you in other ways. But it's so funny you mentioned the bow, and so many people out there might be like, 70 pounds, that doesn't sound like a whole lot. Well, as a bow hunter, I don't know if you've ever bow hunted or not, but a 70-pound bow, for all those out there. I shoot a 70-pound. Now I'm guessing this is a like a traditional bow, so maybe like a long bow, or I can't imagine they have a compound bow.
No.
But my bow is a compound bow, and it is 70-pound pull. I like all the men out there that are hearing that have never pulled a bow back, that are saying 70 pounds, like, holy smokes, I can do that. Come over to my house and I'll let you try to pull my bow back. I can almost guarantee you, unless you are extremely strong, without the repetitions of pulling a bow back on a regular basis, you will struggle. Just guaranteed.
It's not as easy as you might think. Like you think like a 70-pound like dumbbell, but it's a different kind of strength. It's wild. I mean, I've seen videos of bodybuilders like doing like a row, and then like a rock climber comes up and he can do more weight than the bodybuilder. It's like, how does that happen? Well, it's because you're able to utilize more muscles. Like the strength is different in your muscles just because you're using them in a different way.
You know what's also interesting, and I think this plays into that bodybuilder versus the like rock climber idea. So I wrestled growing up. That was another sport that I did. And there's this concept of like leverage, using more muscles to make a movement more powerful. You see this with pulling a compound bow back, right? You give it to the strong guy, he's going to use the muscles he's used to using, right? And therefore he's dumping all that 70 pounds into 2 or 3 little, maybe just his shoulder muscle, which, good Lord, hopefully doesn't jerk back on you and rip your shoulder out.
Yeah.
But like, you're going to really struggle. But as a wrestler, when I would grab a hold of somebody that was stronger than me, but didn't wrestle, immediately I had an advantage because I knew leverage. I understood like where to grab. I could use my abdominal muscles, my back muscles, my hips. I was lowering my body mass so that I was using more weight as I was also pulling with my strength. And people would grab a hold of me, and I was much smaller than growing up, right? And as a wrestler, we would kind of lock up, and immediately people would be like, dude, Joey is just so strong, right?
Yeah.
He's like just so strong. He's like, look how small he is. Like somehow he's just so strong. And we go to the gym, and I'm like, dude, I can barely put up 135 pounds on bench, right? Barely. So it's exactly what you're talking about with the Tanzania guys, where it's like the way they live, they're activating and utilizing so much of their body that when it comes to doing those everyday tasks, they're going to outperform so many people that are hitting the gym on a regular basis, because it's almost like there's a form involved.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think there's an importance obviously to hitting the gym, but that the gym is really just a recreation, an invention, if you will, because we've, we don't move our bodies anymore. So we've needed to like invent a way for us to move our bodies. So I move my body like with the intention of just like when I go squat in the gym, that's not so I can brag about putting up weight, right? Some people do that, whatever. But that's so like when I lift a box up off my garage floor and put it on the top shelf, that's like what I'm training to do. When I deadlift, I don't want to throw my back out, which I did actually throw my back out when I was chopping up wood earlier in the fall for our winter fireplace. So like I know I need to like strengthen some of my core muscles there, but that's what I'm training to do in the gym is I deadlift there because I'm not I work a desk job, or like I'm working here behind the cameras, like putting out content. Most of my like life is here. Like I'm not going out living like hunter gatherers, right? Yeah. Which they would just naturally move their bodies. They would get down in deep squat positions. They would pull that bow back often. They're doing all those things. So they're constantly just kind of working out throughout the day by how they live their lives. So me going to the gym for 30 to 60 minutes a day is just kind of a recreation of that,
It's like, that's where the tension lies, right? Is that men have for so many generations just gone about their life and just naturally been doing what they're supposed to be doing physically. Therefore, it prolonged their testosterone levels, their health, their muscle mass. And now there's a conflict of interest, right? Because we have these more comfortable lives. Right now, you and I are sitting down in a comfortable area. I literally have a cup of tea, right? So I've got
coffee.
Tea, right. Yeah, we were out of coffee, unfortunately, but like I got a cup of tea, and I'm sitting in a really comfortable chair that doesn't hurt my butt too much, and we're going to talk about fitness, right? It's hilarious, and I'm going to have to get out from this interview and go into my gym and lift weights to stress my body out in a way that will keep me at a certain threshold, so that when I am called to action, right? When I am chopping the wood, for me, again, hunting is a big part of my life. Dragging a deer out, you hunt, right, Craig?
Yeah.
So, if you haven't ever drug a deer, I don't care how fit you are, unless it's like, 10 yards. I don't care how fit you are. I don't care. I've been in such good shape. I've run marathons, like lifted tons of weights, like been in crazy shape. For some reason, dude, you got to drag that deer out of the woods and you got all your gear and you're in like awkward positions. You're dead. You're dead.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. And it's like, when you have that call to action, like you have to keep yourself like ready for that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And speaking of getting yourself ready for that, I'll give you a quick story. So a few years ago, I worked for Liver King as like his social media guy. I did. And one of the things that we did, it wasn't mandatory, but it was like a highly encouraged thing to do, was his workout called the Barbarian. Have you heard of this workout?
Tell me about it.
So this workout is basically a mile walk, but you have 2 10-pound ankle weights on one 10-pound ankle weight on each leg. You're carrying 70-pound kettlebells in each hand. You have a 70-pound ruck on your back, and you're pulling was like a 120-pound sled.
Oh my gosh.
And you got to walk for a mile, and you can't take any weight off. You can set the kettlebells down, you can lay on your back, but then you got to get up with all that weight. And so I'd never done anything like that. Like I was a swimmer, I was a baseball player. Like I wasn't huge into like lifting a ton of weights. And so I trained for like 6 months for this, or however many months. And it took me 2.5 hours. And that was like the most pain I've physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally I've ever been in. I was close. Like I had like 20, 30 people around me cheering me on for every like 2.5 hours. But like to what you're saying, like when you're in a position, like I could have easily quit, right? Like I could have quit, like no harm, no foul really. Like it's not life or death. But when you're out there, like the hunter gatherers, like your life literally, and the lives of your family literally depends on you pulling that deer out of the woods. And granted, you probably have a team, like a tribe with you to help you with that. But like doing these things were just natural to us. And that was kind of the reasoning behind doing that workout, was like, hey, if I do this hardest thing I'll ever have done in my entire life, then everything else after that will be hopefully easier. Like if I face a work problem, it'll be hopefully easier.
The last quarter mile of that is so intense. The last quarter mile of that, what was like the most frustrating weight that you had to deal with? Like if you were like, man, if I could just shed this off, like which one was like, what was the most frustrating part?
Man, all of it, but
All of it.
it's like for a lot of people, it's the grip strength, but for me, that was fine. I've always had like a weaker low back. I don't know if it's what it was, if I just haven't worked out those muscles right, but I think just carrying the backpack was really putting a lot of strain on my low back. Some people, it was the ankle weights, like the way it was like rubbing on their skin, like rubbing their skin raw. But for me, it was the backpack. And I think that was a sign, like that was probably my weakest muscle group was my back, my low back. And if I could have just got rid of that, that would have been better.
That makes sense. My first thought was, and again, I haven't done this, but my first thought was the kettlebells. I was like, dude, that sounds brutal. I mean, just like amidst all the other strain that you're feeling, the mental energy that goes into holding on to something with your hands, and like you can't try to zone out because you're gonna drop them, right?
Yep.
And you must have crazy grip strength. 70-pound kettlebells are heavy.
Yeah, they're heavy. I would take like, some people did different tactics. I think I took like 10 or 15 steps and then stopped, and then 10 or 15 steps, stopped for 10, 20 seconds. And some people it takes 6 hours. Some people it takes an hour. It took me 2.5 hours. So one of the hardest things I've definitely ever done, but definitely speaks to like dragging the deer out and just doing those things that we've done historically throughout time.
100%. Oh my gosh. Yeah. This idea of being kind of ready for the call to action, right? I mean, that's pretty extreme, but that's, same with it, dragging a deer out, but it is something that I want to be able to do for a long time. Right. Mm-hmm. So whenever people ask me, cause I get this sometimes, like, man, what are you training for? It's like, one, I'm competitive. So deep down, I'm competitive. And so if, Craig was to come over, or you're in Pennsylvania now.
Yeah.
Or if we were to show up in Pennsylvania, hey, let's get a workout in. Naturally, now no hard feelings, but I'm just naturally going to feel a little bit of a competitive edge of like,
same.
Hey, whatever Craig's going to want to do, I want to at least be like a formidable force in this. I don't want to look like a chump. And at the same time, if there was a competition, I want to win. Like, it's just how it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I go out and I'm training, I don't like the thought of falling behind. So if I'm going to be running, I don't want to have a slower time than I had last time. I don't want to feel more tired when I went on a long run. And it's just a sickness that I have, and it helps me.
I'm the same way. I don't know if it's like most men in general, or because we have athletic backgrounds, but I know, one, I need to like work out for something. Like if I'm going to work out, like I need a plan, like I need a goal to work towards, or I'm less likely to go and work out. But I'm also like, I'm a very competitive person. Like when I'm locked into something, it could be work, it could be whatever. When I'm locked in, like I'm locked in. And it's funny because I take my workouts, like if I'm there to work out, like I'm there to work out. And my wife, God bless her, she's the most beautiful person in the world. She's not as competitive as me. And so maybe people out there can relate, but sometimes like I'll be a little competitive to her, and she's like, I'm not trying to like compete. I'm just working out. And I'm just like, I forgot, like, sorry, we butt heads a little bit on that. But like her sister, though, her one sister, she played college soccer, and she's got that like really competitive edge. So like we compete sometimes, and like, so I think it's just the individual, maybe the background a little bit, but sometimes I got to like lay back, lay off of it a little bit with my wife.
I feel that, right? What was it? Elizabeth will always look at me like, I don't want to run with you. And I'm like, I promise, I'll just go whatever pace you want. She's like, I don't even like the word that you said that you'll go whatever pace I want. It's like, I don't care. She won't run with me. We don't run together, but we don't like to work out together, which is fine. And some people do. We don't, and it's because I have a sickness that she doesn't have, and I'm the problem, right? 100%, I'm the problem. Yeah. She's very easygoing and lovable, and I am sick in the head. But anyhow, that being said, you mentioned sleep, and we're talking about fitness, and we're talking about testosterone, we're talking about being capable, rise to the challenge, this kind of stuff. And I think this is all very male. Men do this typically. A lot of men that I know, they fall within this track of, I want to be capable when the time calls. Like if someone says, hey, are you able to do this? Most men are like, I want to be able to say yes. I don't know very many that are like, nah, I don't want to be able to do that. But like drag the deer out.
All right.
If you're like, hey, you're not capable, Like that would be, there's some pride there that men have that they want to be able to do that.
Or like you get stuck in the mud, or you want to have that friend to call on that like can help you do that.
Exactly. The sleep side. So now we're kind of getting into like recovery. So we need to be stressing our bodies, right? We need to be shooting the bow. We need to be dragging the deer. We need to be, marching the 1 mile with all the weights and the sled, and we need to be, hitting the gym. But then there's a recovery side, right? This is also beneficial to building our testosterone, but also muscle mass. Tell me about like good sleep. Tell me about what you do to kind of help promote that, what men can be doing and thinking about.
So we have two different states. We have a catabolic state, which breaks us down, and we have an anabolic state, which builds us up. And so sleep is really where we repair, we recover, we build ourselves up. We take all that nutrition that we ate during the day and we use those nutrients to build ourselves back up. We break ourselves in the gym or through living our lives, yard work. We break ourselves down during the day. And sleep is where your body's actually going to build you back up so you become stronger. And so I was thankful enough to learn that early on in 2014 when I started getting into my, crunchy side, if you will. And sleep was like that thing, because when I said I started working for Sean Stevenson, he wrote his book, best-selling book, Sleep Smarter. And so I went full in, read his book a few times, and I learned a lot inside his book. And that was like one of the first things, other than nutrition. I think sleep was like that first thing. I was like, this is like a low hanging fruit that I can really optimize in college. And I lived with roommates, so it wasn't always the easiest to try and optimize my sleep. When they're throwing parties, I would leave and go stay with Bethany at her place. But really, I mean, there's just like low hanging fruit that you can apply that can really help your sleep quality. Once you understand like the value that sleep gives you, then you can really just start taking advantage and just applying all these little tips. And I think a couple of the things, I mean, one of the first things that I did, and I didn't always do this, like as a teenager, I would sleep with my phone in my bedroom right next to my head. I'd be on Twitter at the time, Instagram, whatever. And I just fall asleep with my phone right there next to my head. And so putting my phone out in the kitchen, just keeping it on the charger overnight, that was like the number one thing that I did that really helped me to get good sleep right away. Because I wasn't staring into screens. I wasn't just boggled down. Like I was able to actually fall asleep quick. And then I stayed asleep because I didn't have notifications going off. The other thing, like staring at screens, like I kind of mentioned, like putting on either blue light blocking glasses or just red lights in your house, not staring directly into TV, like or your screen right before bed, or not having your house lights on within an hour before bed, because that can basically signals to your biology that it's daylight. Like, hey, this is still sunlight shining down on me, which is going to keep your cortisol elevated. But if you can dim those lights or just put on some red lights, that'll signal to your body that, hey, the moon is out, like the sun's down. Let's produce some melatonin, which is like you get good sleep when your melatonin's high. People are popping all these melatonin supplements, which is, we could talk about that, but your body makes it yourself if you just get in a dark enough environment. So those are just a couple low hanging fruits that you can apply right away to get some good sleep.
And it's crazy too, because we're consumed in this world today with health influencers, right? And men specifically, they typically fall into the category, at least, again, maybe my algorithm is the weird one, but you're going to see the David Goggins, Jocko Willinks, the
all the
Kings. It's like it's almost like if you sleep, you're a right, like whatever, you fill in the blank here with an expletive, but like or like I wake up at 3 a.m. I went to bed at 12, and I work out 3 times a day, and like all these guys are like, man, I just need to work out more, right? I just need to keep working out. And the reality is that 99.9% of guys, that's not true.
Yeah.
And that is not good for you. And now what I don't have, and I'd love to know what you'd recommend, is a specific number. I will say for me, I am like a 5 to 7-ish hours, like 7 hours is like my sweet spot. If I sleep longer than that, if I'm honest, I actually start to feel kind of groggy and not so great.
Yeah.
But there's I know I've read studies of like how often you hear the 8 hours of sleep, and but like, what would you say for men specifically? Where should they be targeting? Should there be like cues that they should pick up on of like, hey, this is right for me? Any recommendations there?
I mean, definitely the more active you are, the more you're probably going to need to sleep. I mean, you might have heard like LeBron sleeps 9 hours a night. I don't know if that's actually true or not, but Michael Phelps, I think, slept a ton. But yeah, I mean, the number of hours, I'm typically in the ballpark of like 7 is kind of like where I'm at. But early on, I started doing sleep cycles and counting sleep cycles. And if I can get at least like 4 sleep cycles, and a sleep cycle lasts 90 minutes. So if you're doing one sleep cycle is 90 minutes, then 2, 3, 4, what is that? Like 6 hours, something like
Math.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hour and a half times 2 is
3.
6 hours. So
Yeah. So I figured out if I can do 4 sleep cycles, and sleep cycles is basically you're cycling through deep sleep, REM sleep, which is where you're dreaming, and you're constantly going throughout this. And I used an Aura ring for 2, 3 years, and I tracked my sleep cycles, and I figured out like if I can get some good deep sleep, if I can get like 2 hours of deep sleep and maybe 4 sleep cycles, and there's a lot of math there. You don't need to know all this, but if I figured out if I could just do that and I would get 6 hours, I'd feel great. But there would be nights where I would sleep 8, 9 hours and my sleep wasn't the best. Maybe I was woken up from like lights or like car alarms or something outside. And I had a lot of light sleep. I wasn't as recharged. So I think what's most important is really optimizing the sleep that you are getting. If you're asleep for 5 hours, really try and make that the best sleep that you can with limited distractions, make your room nice and cool, limit the lights, things like that. If you can get a good 6 hours of sleep, a high quality deep sleep, then that's probably going to be the best for most people.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, the quality of sleep in this case is what I'm hearing can have almost, if not more of an impact than the time. I mean, and if you're getting none, right? Some is better than none. I would kind of venture to guess, but yeah, it's so funny, man, how easy it is for a man who is feeling that competitive energy, right, to get coerced into doing things that are very unhealthy because there's another guy out there posting on social media like very doctored clips of what they're doing, and it's
to that point, I mean, like, I feel like in our society with social media in full effect, there's a lot of blessings to it, but also I think there's a lot of negatives to it. And you're seeing like you're seeing everybody's highlight reel but then you're seeing like you mentioned the Goggins and the Jockos of the world saying like, get up at 4 a.m., 3 a.m., or you're a POS basically. And it's like, not necessarily. I mean, like you probably need a little bit more sleep. Like, do guys in our society today maybe need a little bit more movement? Do they need to work smarter and harder in some ways? Yeah, but it doesn't mean you have to get up early. That might work for some people, but also understanding like you also need your sleep too. And if you're having to nap or crash at 2 p.m, what are the trade-offs there? You probably need a little bit more sleep throughout the night.
And just for the record, I think Jocko and David Goggins are are mostly good. So like I would say most men today need those messages. I would say though that there's also people out there that are going to go out and replicate everything that they're saying to a T, and because everybody's different, that I don't think that's good. So, but like, that would be the same thing for someone listening to me. It's like mostly good, right? Because there's going to be things that are good for Craig in his life with the circumstances that he's in, his body composition, right? Like if I want to start talking about nutrition here in a little bit of like how we fuel ourselves, right? And the way that I feel myself is probably gonna be different than the way that you feel yourself, right? And that's because we're different human beings, and there's beauty to that, and that's what we're chasing after is education and make the best decisions for us. And you can definitely look to others for inspiration, and that's very good and healthy, but knowing where you're crossing into a line of, well, this is actually not as good for me, but also knowing like not to use that wording right there as an excuse to not do anything, right? Because you can look at Jocko and say, hey, he's waking up at 4:30 and he's doing this thing, but it's like, hey, maybe waking up at 4:30 every single day is not right for me, but having discipline to hammer the nail every single day for what is good for me is absolutely the core message there. And that is a very good message. That is a very good message, that having rhythms, routines, getting good sleep, putting your phone on the counter, getting it away from your bed, whether it's because of the notifications. I mean, we could get into EMFs, right? We could talk about how, like, if you're going to like, maybe you start, baby step is just put it on airplane mode at night, right? Maybe a baby step is turn it off. Maybe a baby step is like, if you can't be separated from it, do some things to kind of limit notifications that you're going to be hearing. But having those rhythms, routines, that discipline is very good. I just wanted to say that because, man, I'm not telling people out there like, man, don't watch or listen to Jocko or David Goggins or there's more. They're just not coming to my head right now. Or Joe Rogan's, right? These people that are out there that are doing a lot of things that are very extreme. Like I get into the ice bath, every day at 4:30. Cameron Haynes would be another one that I'm a fan of, but they do things that are pretty extreme.
100%. You said that perfectly. I think it's the discipline and the mindset, and because we all have the same 24, right? It's like, how can we maximize that in our own lives with our own schedules? If you sleep in until 7 or 8 and you're maximizing the time you have awake and you're getting your sleep, like I think that's what's most important. But you have the discipline to be able to do the work that you're doing, to make yourself a better person, to protect and provide for your wife, your family, your kids. I think that's what's most important. It doesn't matter what time you're getting up. It's just that I think in our culture today, it's like the CEOs and the high achievers are morning people, I guess, if you will. But there's so many successful people out there that wake up at 7, 8 o'clock that are achieving so many. You can look up examples and people are achieving so much and they're sleeping in. It's like, you don't have to follow them to a T, like you're saying.
100%. And again, you're also getting a small picture, right? And again, no shame out there, but like Jocko's not going to post it when he has dessert, right? He's not going to post it. Like, does he? I don't know. Maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't.
Yeah.
But like, he's not going to post online like, look at this chocolate sundae I had after dinner.
It's a highlight reel.
It is. And you know what? I don't post a whole lot on Instagram, but like, maybe I'll do that for a week. I'll just post all the ways I screw up, and just like let people see
I love it.
all the ways that I screw up, and not just be this like. Although I suck at social media, I need to get better at documenting anything at all. But so sleep, I totally get that. So you talked about the phone. Any other like tricks or tips? You talked about light, like practical things that you can do or men can do like in their home today that can help set them up for like excellent sleep.
Yeah. Like I mentioned, I think I mentioned keeping your bedroom cool. Anywhere from like 62 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit is kind of that ideal temperature.
Why is that?
Because I like to say, you like to keep your body warm, but you like to keep your head cool. And your head, your brain, actually, this is wild. Your brain cells actually shrink up to 30% while you're sleeping, in order for the cerebrospinal fluid to kind of slosh around and clear out all the tau proteins that are associated with Alzheimer's. It really cleanses out your brain, and it needs to be cooler in order for a lot of these processes to happen. It just feels good when you sleep in a cool environment. And so sleeping in a cool environment, I like it cooler than my wife likes it. So we kind of set on like a happy medium, like 66 degrees, 67 sometimes, and that works fine. That's a really good one. But then also, nutrition, this might be a nice segue into nutrition, but there's also certain nutrients that we need from our food in order to get good sleep. Collagen has a amino acid called glycine. This is important for not only glutathione. Glutathione is our body's master antioxidant, and glutathione is made up of 3 amino acids, glycine being one of them, but also in order to like cool your head down internally to get good sleep and actually cycle through your sleep stages appropriately, your body needs glycine. And if people aren't eating like a nose to tail approach with bone broth or just a collagen supplement, then you're probably not going to be getting a ton of glycine in your diet. And that's why the modern diet is terrible for people, is because they're not getting a lot of these micronutrients in. So just optimizing your diet and keeping the bedroom cool is a great way to get better sleep.
That's so interesting with the cool bedroom. Now, I always grew up with a cold house, but I always blamed it on the fact that my dad was just cheap. It was like, he didn't like, I'd be like, Dad, it's freezing. I can see my breath in here. It's like, it's cold.
Yeah.
And I kind of grew very accustomed to that. So today, literally last night, I look at Elizabeth, I'm like, I'm dying right now. It's so hot in here and I got to figure something out. Right. So I got fans on, I'm opening a window. It's like whatever I can do to kind of cool the place down. And of course, I maybe wasn't as happy and joyful as I should have been when I expressed these feelings. So she's just like, I don't care. Like, you figure it out, dude. Like, this sounds like your problem. Because of course she's got a newborn baby to deal with. Right. And it's interesting though, because now I have a cool little token I can play of like, hey, you know what? This is the optimal health. We need to cool this room down. So let's ensure that we're making that happen. The what was so it was the bedroom being cool, but then nutrition and diet. And you're talking about glycine. You said you find that in nose to tail eating, high in red meat. You said collagen. Is it chicken and fish as well, or is it, what are we looking at?
Some, yeah, but mostly in like collagenous tissues. And how often are we eating like the collagenous parts of the meats? Because we prize the tender, the strips and the ribeyes and even the ground beef. Ground beef might have a little bit more because, I'm sure you've, butchered your own deer and you're kind of putting everything else kind of into that ground beef. So same thing, like that, but bone broths, especially this time of year, like I love having a nice hot cup of broth that's going to be full of glycine, of collagen, of gelatin. And we can talk about ways to like make that really good. Some is better than the other, but yeah, that's a good way to get it in.
I like drink when it's cold outside and I'm hunting. I like to drink broth in the stand. So I'll bring out like a thermos with me.
Yep.
And you're sitting out there freezing, and it's almost like something to look forward to. And I'll set a time of, all right, I'm going to be still, I'm going to be focused, and I'll reward myself for this effort of sitting here quietly, silently at like 9 a.m.
Yep.
I'll bust out the broth, because typically, at least where I'm hunting, those first like 2 hours, right, are kind of like your prime time. And I'm more willing to risk it, right, of being caught, with a deer coming out when I've got a cup of broth in my hand. But
I know this past year, I'm sure you went out on the first day of rifle season, and it was freezing cold. And where I'm at in Pennsylvania, it was like a real feel of like 6 degrees. It was maybe 17 degrees. And my brother and we walked out of there. I think we left our place at like 5:45 in the morning, our hunting camp. And, you're sitting in your tree stand, you're up there, and you're still warm from walking to your stand, right? Yep. And so the sunrise was at like 7:15, and, you're just taking it all in, the beauty of everything. It's really quiet, and, you're just, it's a place that I like to say just is another place that I like to call home, because it's, you don't get many places that are that quiet, like that beautiful, a lot anymore. And I'm out there, and then, like you said, like 8:30, 9 o'clock, I'm ready for a hot cup of broth or coffee or something.
The cold starts to set in, and it just does not stop. It does not stop. And speaking of which, this idea of like conditioning yourself for different kinds of temperatures, have you heard of this?
Yeah, and contrast therapy.
What do you think about that?
I love it personally. I've been doing it a while. I just got a little like a wood burning sauna here in our house. I don't have a cold plunge here anymore, but when I lived in Texas the past few years, I used multiple cold plunges all the time, and I loved it. I loved the way I felt. Like it was just this, I did something so hard, kind of like we were talking about the barbarian workout. Like I did something so hard, but the cold plunge you do for like 30 seconds to 3 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever you want to do, and you just get back and forth between that and the sauna. I love it. I mean, there's so many benefits, but just the mental clarity, the feeling I get, I just felt rejuvenated. I think it's great for a lot of people.
I have done it before. I had a buddy, he's got a plunge. It's one of these like circulating with the pump, and then he's got the sauna, and you'll get the cold plunge. We did 3 minutes, so that was it. That was his kind of like his quota, right? So we get in there 3 minutes, and then you get out and you go get in the sauna. Mm-hmm. And man, I'll tell you what, you're dying to get in that sauna. You're like, you can't wait, right? You're like, let's get in the sauna as fast as possible. But then very quickly you're in the sauna, dude. It's hot, and it's like for me, it was like hard to breathe. It was like heavy on my chest. And as soon as you get out of that sauna, you're like, you hose off quick because you're gross, and you're getting back into that cold plunge. And that, dude, you just do not want to get in there.
No.
You just do not want to get in there, but you got people watching, right? So you do it.
You do it.
And you, I did enjoy it. What about like, again, I'm probably fooling myself here, but the idea of like sitting out in the woods, eventually you do get cold. I do. At least I get cold. I'm not sitting there with like a heated blanket on. And there's any benefits to that? Does it have to be the extreme?
Definitely, because I mean, like we live in like a climate controlled world. We go from, I'm in my 70-degree home right now, and if I go anywhere, it's going to be in one of my Jeeps that is 70 degrees or whatever that I can control, and I go to another building that's probably 70 plus degrees. So it's like we don't deviate. But if you can go even like 50 degrees, 80 degrees, like back and forth a little bit, just allow your body to naturally go through that. Yeah, you don't have to get as extreme as a sauna or a cold plunge. Just stepping outside, like it's probably 30 degrees outside right now. My dogs love it. And I go out there and I'll try and stay out as long as I can in shorts and a t-shirt, and then come back in like 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes if I can, do that. And even that's just enough to like recharge me. Right. But I'll tell you what, nothing feels better than coming back from my tree stand, freezing cold. And my uncle always has a big pot of chili ready. I don't know if your family or friends do this too, but like sitting in front of the fire, hopefully you have a deer that you got. But even if you don't, like you look forward to that chili or soup or whatever, and you just sit there and eat that. It's the best feeling because you just got so cold. And then it's just this warm, soul-filling food. I think it's embedded in our DNA, honestly.
I'm currently deerless this year, but we have this family recipe meal that we would eat. It's been like generations. We call it goulash. I don't know. It's like a chili, but we put it over noodles, and it's got like peppers and onions and tomatoes. And dude, it's just like it sticks to your ribs, bro. And it's like it's so hot and brothy, and oh my gosh, to say I look forward to it would be a severe understatement. Sometimes I'll be sitting in the deer stand thinking like I hate this right now. Like, if we're honest, like there's been times where I'm in the stand that you get the beautiful views. Well, depending on how much you hunt, I have not hunted as much this year, but in years past, I've hunted a lot more, put more time in the stand. And after a while, you're like, man, like this is not.
It's miserable.
Yeah, like you're just cold and alone and not seeing anything. And if you just watch birds, it's like eventually, yeah, I saw that one again, and you're just like counting on the time to have some goulash, right? So, totally get that. Fuel. Let's talk about fuel for. Let's talk about fuel for men. Let's talk about fuel for men. Goulash, obviously. Chili, obviously. Great way to come back home and recharge after a really cold day. But when we're considering recovery and we're considering fuel, again, in college, there was this idea that I was given in that, hey, after a game or a 2 or 3 day or whatever, like pizza, eat as much pizza as you can, and that'll be, good for you, right? I understand fuel differently now, personally, but we talked about eating the red meat. Maybe it's even like less desirable components of red meat, right? Most of that getting cut off, in a manufacturing plant or whatever or a butcher to give you the lean strips of meat because that's what we want. But when we're talking about nutrition and in the regards of like macros and being a high performer and encouraging recovery, what are some of the nutritional tips and tricks that you would say you've learned thus far for men to be a high performer?
There's a lot there. As simple as it gets, like I love to keep it simple and source local. That's kind of like my first step is, I like to hunt and I'm deerless as well, but I also had opportunities to shoot some deer, but I also know like I have we get a cow. So like we can stock our meat freezer full of a cow. So like I'm not going to, take a deer's life if I don't if I don't really have to, it's like I'm not living like hunter gatherers where it's like life or death. Right. So going to the farmer's market for me, going to the local farm, but like simple strategies, like making sure you're getting protein in. And that's not fuel, that's building blocks. Like protein is building blocks. That's going to help your muscle mass. That's going to help a lot of different things, testosterone, metabolism. Fuel is either from fat or carbs. So just making sure you get protein in. And I'm a big fan of animal sourced protein, red meats, even like poultries, raw dairy, things like that. And then your fuel is going to come from either carbs or fats. And depending on how well you're metabolically adjusted or flexible will depend on how well you can use carbs and fats for fuel. And so simply, I like to do the proteins, but then when you start blending your carbs and fats together is when you can get into a little trouble. For example, having a baked potato with a lot of butter or sour cream, it's really easy to overeat that because it's just a lot of calories together and it kind of tricks your brain into overeating that. So if you're going to do one thing, like kind of just like choose one fuel. And I think like bodybuilders understand this, like they usually shy away from like the fats and they'll just stick with like carbs because it's easy to overeat a lot of the fat calories. But if you're going to do more of a higher fat, I guess, ketogenic approach, and we can maybe dissect that a little bit. Yeah, I think fats are an amazing source of fuel. It's just you got to kind of manage your carbohydrate sources a little bit.
So I typically aim for a 1 gram of protein per ideal pound of body weight is kind of what I aim for.
Yeah.
And so right now for me, I weigh, again, I'm a runner, so this will be embarrassing in a man conversation, but I weigh about 160 pounds, and that's if I'm like soaking wet. And if we're honest, I would like to put on a little bit more muscle than I have currently. The way that I've been doing that is eating roughly, I strive to eat or consume like 170 grams of protein a day. And then I lift weights, and then when I run, I'm doing more high intensity running rather than just long distance, easier heart rate running. I don't know how else to explain that. So I'm trying to continue to improve my cardiovascular health by running still, but instead of like going out and running 15 miles, I go run 5, but I run like a minute per mile faster than I would have run otherwise. And I've found what seems to be a good balance for me right now. The fat and the carbs, I have a hard time tracking, if I'm honest. Yeah. And so let's definitely dig into that. So protein, I don't know a guy out there, at least if you're hearing this for the first time, but like that's not aware that protein is going to help them or benefit them. But I think where we get confused, and I feel like a little bit confused with fat and carbs. What would be some ideal like tracking metrics to consider? What are some foods that maybe could be convenient or easy to gravitate towards to help me in this journey? Like what would you say to that?
Yeah, so I'm always a fan of just eating protein like first thing in the morning, and typically like I'll lay out, and what works for me might not work for you or anyone else, but typically what I kind of like to do is in the morning, I love a big old yogurt bowl. I've been doing this for a few years. I get yogurt from our local farm, and they actually have Greek yogurt, which is higher in protein and it's less fat. It's just, I like the texture of that a little bit better. So sometimes we'll do that. I'll throw on maybe like a homemade granola, maybe some maple syrup, blueberries, fresh blueberries, like the little wild blueberries. And then it may be sometimes a nut butter. It's not too serious, but that's a load of calories right there that I'm able to get in, preferably after a workout. That's when I would do it, after I've done like a heavy lift or something like that, maybe like 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, I'll eat that. But then like throughout the day, maybe I'll have lunch, which is like a nice hearty soup with maybe some sweet potatoes in it or something like that. So I'm not afraid of the carbs. I'm pretty active, so I like to do those. It's just, I think when you start combining a lot of the fats and the carbs together, it's really easy to overeat. And if we're not as active, then it can really, start to add up over time and put on a little bit more body fat. So easy things to do. I mean, you can, like I said, like I like to go to the farmer's market, but I understand that not everybody can do that or go to the farm. So if you're shopping the grocery store, shop the perimeter is like one thing I like to say. But if you're going to get things that are in boxes and bags and packages, look obviously for like minimal ingredients on there, names you can pronounce. Listen to your show, because you guys have probably a lot of good episodes on that. 100%. But that's typically what I do, is keep it simple. I focus on just putting protein first and centering that around most of my meals.
I think there's also some strategies that I've been utilizing lately that, and again, please shoot this out of the sky if it's off, because I've been doing it, and I'd like to perfect, or at least try to attempt to do the best that I can. And knowing what I'm going to do that day helps me identify a little bit what I'm going to eat. So this morning, I ate as much protein as I could, but I had some potatoes with my breakfast, because I know that I was going to jump into a podcast interview, and that shortly after that podcast interview, my workout's is going to happen. Mm-hmm. It's just that was the way my day works out today, and that's what we're going to do. And so I like intentionally ate those potatoes with the meat and the eggs, because that's what I wanted. That's where we're headed. And I know that post that workout, I'll hit a protein shake. Like that's what we're going to do, and that'll have like a quart of raw milk in it, because I'm a psychopath. But that's what I love. Maybe not a quart, maybe a pint. But I love the raw milk protein shakes. It's almost like a ceremonious like activity for me, like post workout. Mm-hmm. It's almost like I start to crave it, right? I have to do it. It's just become such a rhythm and routine. Another way that I look at this though is that if I'm at the office, so I'm at the office today, I'm at my house today, but if I'm at the office, I know that likely I will have a lot of readily accessible protein for lunch. And depending on how much of a rush I'm in, I might not have been able to wake up and eat a bunch of eggs and whatnot. So yogurt's another thing that I'll use in the morning. So it's got some fat in it, right? And I've got some protein in it, and whether there's some sugar or something in there to kind of give me some fuel, like additional carbs, that'll help me. And we found this. We had this yogurt company on the podcast that we are like obsessed with. We buy them as much as we possibly can. We can get some yogurt from our farm. And again, just my personal preference. There's a company called Painterland Sisters. Have you heard of this company?
No.
Oh my gosh, dude. If you have like a Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, something like this around you, like they're not in every, like, I hope they are soon in every major store, but Painterland Sisters yogurt is like unbelievable. And I'll rip into a Painterland Sisters yogurt, and I'm trying to remember her name was maybe Haley, maybe. But anyways, that is like my number one. If I can't get Painterland Sisters, I'll get, again, I'm talking to people out there that are shopping at the grocery store, right? Again, we do get farm yogurt, the raw milk protein shake, and again, right now, the Ancestral Supplements protein is just like elite. I can't. It's better than any protein powder I've ever had. But like Siggy's is another brand that we will look into. And again, it's higher in protein. It's that texture that you're talking about, and can hit one of those, knowing that if it can get me to lunchtime, then I can have like 5 hard-boiled eggs and like some chicken, right? That's kind of like what my lunch will look like oftentimes. And then I know that when I get home for dinner, typically I've had a really busy day, and if I haven't worked out in the morning day in the office, I'll come home from work and then I'll work out. As soon as I walk in the door, helps clear my head. I can be a good husband, good father. Again, it's something about it. For me, it helps me. I'm not the wake up at 4:30 and work out. Sometimes I do that depending on what my day looks like, but mostly it's get home, get my tasks done, and then I hit a workout in, and then I'm having dinner. And then dinner for me is, man, if I'm going to eat a bunch of carbs, it tends to be dinner. And maybe that's wrong, but that tends to be when it happens.
No, I like that. And there's a lot of debate, I guess, in the nutrition space. Some people say to eat your biggest meal in the morning, and then like, I forget what that saying is, like eat like a king in the morning, a prince, then a pauper kind of throughout the day. I kind of do the opposite. And that's what I like. Like I've fasted. I've been a big fan of fasting, and I don't technically do any type of intermittent fasting now, but I've just been really vibing with breakfast for the past year, maybe longer than that. Like I said, my yogurt bowl has been my go-to breakfast. Sometimes like I'll mix in like eggs and sausage or whatever, like a high quality source. Sorry.
You're good.
Sorry, there's just something popped up. Okay. But typically I like to do like eggs or something, or sausage in the morning as well, like a mid-morning. So that's also something, but I love to do like a high quality like dinner. And I'm typically the cook. Like I love to cook dinners. I'll get off. Bethany, my wife, she'll meet with her patients throughout the day, and typically I'm done with work a little before her. So like I'll come, and she plans all the meals. Like she'll plan everything in, our notes app, and it'll be like whatever it is. And I'll come down and I'll cook dinner, and it's usually like this time of year, it's like a good soup, or it's some sort of meat with a potato. And people say like, if you're a meat and potato kind of guy, it's not good, but I'm a meat and potato guy. And I think you can get a lot of nutrition that way. Just mix up, you can make like thousands of recipes with meat and potatoes and some veg.
100%. And if we're eating sourdough in our house, which, Elizabeth, she likes to bake sourdough bread. That's dinner time, dude. It's like dinner time. I'm having like a slice of sourdough bread. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm eating. Like, the butters, the pastas, the rice, the potatoes. That's what now, again, we have a lot of wild game in our house. So it's always going to be paired. All those meals are always going to be paired with some awesome source of protein. But man, lunchtime, I just find if I eat a bunch of carbs like that, I feel smoked after a little while. Mm-hmm. And it just doesn't do well for me. I don't know why.
I think this happens like too, like with Thanksgiving, like during the holidays, like you eat a lot of carbs or just a lot of heavy foods in general. And you have a lot of blood rushing to your digestive tract. So you don't have a lot of blood circulating in your brain. You're using a lot of your energy for digesting food. So it depends on the food you're eating. Like if you eat like a protein heavy meal, like limited carbs, like for example, eggs and sausage, maybe even just a piece of sourdough with some butter on it, I'm pretty good. Like I don't feel sluggish after that. But if I eat like a heavy soup, like with sweet potatoes, stuff like that, that's when I start to feel a little sluggish. And that's why I like to do it at the end of the day, because I'm already winding down. It's getting dark out, trying to wind down from that. But you made a really good point about like planning for your day, setting yourself up for success. Cause I can imagine most of the people, guys listening to this in particular, are probably going somewhere to work. And it's like, how do you plan for that? What do what do you make? But I think if you're working like a desk job, I think there's, or depending on if you're working a desk job, if you're doing physical labor, I think if you're doing like a physically demanding job, like probably eating breakfast is probably a good thing for that. But if you're working a desk job where you're more sedentary, you can probably shift your metabolism, and this might take a little time, where you might be able to get away with like a nice fasting protocol. And then hopefully maybe you're able to structure in your workout. Maybe you can do a walk or something in the middle of the day or something like that, to where you can time your first meal with like a little bit of movement too. But
that's so good.
yeah.
And I'll also do that a little bit of like, it can be day to day. It doesn't have to be like I plan the whole week out. It can be, hey, these are how many meetings I have today. I know I'm not going to get a super good lunch, so I'm eat a little bit heavier on breakfast.
Yeah.
And whether it's carbs or protein or whatever, it's like whatever I have available, I know I'm going to need food to have a good day. Additionally, if I'll come home from work and I didn't have, the abundant, beautiful lunch, and I'm like, I want to work out. Well, I will pause. I'll come in, check in on the family, the kids, see if there's any like urgent needs. I will handle those. I'm not like a, removed father that comes home and doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
But I will then address my nutrition. So it's like, hey, I'm going to sit down. Just drove home, just got off work, and I'm going to eat these. Like, I might even eat like a leftover pancake from that morning.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I might even eat like a cupcake if it was there, like whatever it is, like it's just something I can eat right now that'll give me enough fuel to go get that run in, or to go get that workout in. And then after that workout, then I'll hit the protein. So I'm not going to come home, eat a bunch of protein, and then go work out.
Yeah.
I'll eat the carb that I can metabolize like that. Oftentimes it's fruit.
Mm-hmm.
It's mainly fruit, if we're honest. I'll come home, eat an apple, blueberries, blackberries, something like that. Maybe it's watermelon. I'll eat that, and then I'll go do my workout. And mango, I love mango.
Mango's my favorite.
I love mango. So I'm like, we're addicted to mango in this house. But oftentimes it's sit down, eat some mango, and then go hit the workout, and then address the protein. Let's talk about supplements, man. This is something that for men specifically, and for me as well, there's just so much.
Yeah.
There's so much in the world. There's so many people. There's so many people that are promoting their supplements. There's so many reasons to believe that this is going to change your life. And there are supplements that I use on a regular basis. And there's some that I've maybe tried, and I'm not really a huge fan of them. And I'm gonna pull out some of the specific ones that I kind of wrote down here. But my current regimen that I'm utilizing on a regular basis personally is and again, the way I understand supplements, and I want to hear yours, because obviously 10 times more about this than I do, but I think this will be helpful for the conversation of like, take a knuckle dragger's explanation of supplements and then bring an expert in to help kind of clarify the issues found in his understanding.
Yeah.
But electrolytes. So I supplement electrolytes, and the why. So why do I supplement electrolytes? Well, I run long distances, and I want to replenish a lot of the abnormal, I'm going to call it, sweating that I do at periods of time during the day. So I will do that. And then I also supplement protein. So if I'm going to supplement something and introduce a convenience item, which is what a supplement is for me, into my day, I would rather have a convenience item that is helping me achieve my goals rather than be like pleasure, right? So a lot of these convenience items are like potato chips, right? Or whatever. So supplements to me oftentimes are like a treat, right? So it's like my electrolytes are a treat. So I'll mix up an electrolyte drink and drink that post run. So it's almost like I want to go run so I can have my electrolyte drink.
That's
I
cool.
want to get my workout in so I can have my protein shake. And then I'll do oftentimes in the morning like an organs supplement of some form.
Yeah.
And that's it. So that's what mine looks like. Things that I've tried that I don't have a good understanding of are like creatine. Don't totally understand it. It's only because I don't understand it. And so I don't take creatine. I think there's a couple other ones, but anyways, give me the lowdown of supplements, use cases, what's kind of in your hopper on a regular basis, and what we should know about them.
Yeah. So in general, I mean, the supplement market is super saturated, of course, and it's not very well regulated. So typically when I advocate for supplement usage, like, I think you can get a lot done for just like simplicity purposes, like what you're doing, like you're taking like a few simple ones. And I think that's what a majority of guys can probably do, should do, is food first, but then like super simple, just supplements like that you can supplement your diet with, right? But also, like, the supplement industry is not very well regulated, and you want to look for third-party tested supplements, and you could see it there on the label, ask the company, third-party tested. And so I've tried probably so many different supplements, like all of them, like every single one. But no, I've tried a lot, and I've kept it very simple. I don't like taking a ton. Like protein powder is probably one that I do like to take, as long as it's a high quality one. And right now, like in my season of life where I'm at right now, my wife and we've been trying for kids, and I wanted to take supplements that have been like optimizing the health of my sperm. And she's been taking certain supplements that have been optimizing her hormones and the health of her eggs. And we've really been dialing in the food component of that with all the nutrients. But I mean, CoQ10 is another one that I've been taking because it's good for sperm health. She's also been taking it.
What is that?
CoQ10?
Yeah.
It's basically found in large portions in your heart, but it's really good for energy, but it's also good for sperm quality as well, motility, sperm motility. But it's a nutrient that's really found in the heart. So if you harvest a deer, you keep the heart because there's a lot of CoQ10 in there.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So that's just one. And I'm not going to take that all the time, right? Like different seasons of life might call for different seasons of supplements. But ones that I do keep staples are really just organ supplements. And that's not just because I work for Ancestral Supplements, but really because I believe that we should be eating more organs in general. And most people aren't eating organs. So routinely, for the most part, I keep liver, like a beef liver supplement, in maybe 3 or 4 days out of the week. I'm not trying to do it every day, and maybe I might take weeks off, because if you get a deer or a cow or whatever, they only have one liver, and you might not be eating it every day, right? You might be taking time off. So I think that's just important because it's super nutrient dense. So organ supplements are a great one that I recommend there, just across the board for most people. But then we can get like more specific from there and just figure out like, what season of life are you in? Are you struggling with autoimmunity? Do you want to build muscle? You mentioned creatine. We could talk about that, but really it comes down to like what your specific goals are.
I love that. Is so that is so true and so good, right? You can start to utilize supplements to enhance, and really that's what they are, to help you achieve goals that you want to achieve. And could you go purchase the naturally derived, like, could you eat heart every day instead of taking the supplement? Sure. Well, good luck, right? Because, unless you're harvesting deer on a very, very, very regular basis, I don't even know where to go buy heart.
Right.
I don't, maybe like a very niche store here in Cincinnati, Ohio, but I don't know. And actually, funny enough, of all the organ meats, heart is my favorite to eat. It is fantastic. So if you do harvest a deer, the heart is excellent. Mm-hmm. So highly recommend. My kids like gobble it up and love it, and they don't even know what it is, and they're stoked.
It's neutral tasting. It's not like liver or another organ. It's super neutral tasting, like a muscle meat.
100%. People will roll up all the time like, dude, try this liver pate I made. You can't even tell it's liver. It's like, okay, if you have to say that, it's because it's undesirable, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with like turkey and Thanksgiving. People are telling me how great their turkey is. But you wouldn't say that if it was inherently good, because turkey needs a lot of help, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, you look at heart, it's squared away. It's really good stuff. Mm-hmm. The trying for kids factor is huge, right? Mm-hmm. So you think about that, and it's like, hey, instead of just sitting on my hands, I'm going to intentionally do this. Now, everybody has their own story and their own plan and their own way of life and their own objectives, but being able to look at an objective that you have and work towards it is also a very calming and fulfilling feeling. Yeah. And I'm not like, and you wouldn't say this and I wouldn't say this, there's not going to be a pill that's going to change everything in your life. So we all know that. And people have all sorts of different challenges and struggles with autoimmune, having children. There's just things that happen. And so don't want anybody to hear this and be like, I just need the magic pill, right? It ain't going to be that way. There's a lot of other things you're probably doing in addition to taking you said it
CoQ10.
CoQ10.
Yeah.
I dig that. And we'll be thinking about you guys. That's a pretty cool journey that you're on. Creatine. Talk to me about creatine.
Creatine, this is something that we make, depending on, your size, what stage of life you're in, but we make anywhere from like 3 to 5 grams of creatine inside our own bodies endogenously every day. And this is something that really you only get in animal foods like muscle meats. And unless people are eating like a pound of muscle meats a day, you're probably not getting enough creatine in your diet. So why is creatine important? And I think most people maybe have only heard about creatine in terms of like working out, building muscle, bodybuilders taking it, muscle recovery maybe. But creatine is really important, not only for your muscles, but your brain health, also sperm health and things like that. And I take this routinely. I cycle on and off of this depending on what I'm doing in life. But a simple creatine monohydrate is probably the most effective. It's probably the most widely available. It's super cheap. It's super safe. It's probably the number one most studied supplement in the industry, and it's pretty effective. And if you're vegan, vegetarian, plant-based, creatine supplement could maybe help if anyone is struggling with brain fog or memory issues. There's been a lot of cool science showing in maybe patients with dementia, older patients, creatine supplementation can really help because it's crucial for brain health. But really just getting in a little bit every day, unless you're eating like a ton of meat, you're getting in a lot of protein. So maybe you don't need to supplement with creatine, but for individuals out there that aren't eating a lot of meat, that aren't eating a lot of protein in general, could benefit from creatine supplements.
That's super fascinating. To just be very transparent so people can know how wildly off I was. Creatine always seemed like okay, obviously I did not believe it was a like steroid of some kind, but I always saw it as some like muscle like super growing thing. Like that was like my brain. That's how I understood creatine. I had no idea that that's what it was. So creatine is a naturally occurring chemical in our bodies.
Yeah, it's a molecule. It actually keeps water retention in your muscles, but it does more than that, of course, like I just mentioned.
The mental clarity side is really interesting to me because what about people that are older that maybe are dealing with like brain fog for various reasons? Would creatine be something that maybe could help them as well? Okay,
yeah,
that's awesome. I'm learning so much right now, and for the record, my understanding of creatine has completely changed in this moment. Right, I did not know a whole lot about it, and I really dig that. The one thing I was thinking about when you were talking about the supplements, the organ meats, it's fascinating, right? Because the same way that we have a gym to help, like I have a gym in my basement, right? There's a room in my house dedicated to lifting heavy things. It's hilarious when you think about it, right? There's big heavy objects that sit in a room and they wait for me to come down there and lift them and put them down, lift them and put them down. And somehow this is benefiting my life. Well, in the same way that I have that kind of convenience in my life, organ meat supplements can be there for us because in the same way that we used to live a life where I wasn't going to sit at a desk and I was going to be drawing that bow back and trying to hunt an animal and drag that animal out of the woods on a regular basis, building the structure, just going to war, right? This kind of stuff that was very natural, like everyday life. The food that we were consuming also looked a heck of a lot different in those times as well. And so having to worry about these sorts of supplements didn't really matter. Right. And nowadays you can go a whole day you can go a whole month, a whole like quarter without having any organ meats at all. I mean, there's probably a lot of people out there that never do. And introducing these into your diet, even at like a very minimal level, can really help improve your life. And so it's so funny. It's not necessarily something that's like a synthetic product that someone discovered that's going to make you superhuman. If anything, it's like, hey, let's get back to the baseline that was initially established.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. That's the simplicity that you mentioned. Like the food probably looked a lot different when we were not even just hunter gatherers, but just 150 years ago, before ultra processed foods entered our diet. What were humans eating? And we were eating whole foods from nature, and it would have been a waste to throw away the organs, the parts of the animal. I mean, intuitively, lions, cheetahs, like other omnivores, carnivores out there will go for the organs and fat first because it's the most nutrient dense parts of the animals. They didn't just go for the fillet. They didn't go for the ribeyes. Like they went for these organs first. And Dr. Bill Schindler, who I know we both know, he's talked about, arguably eating organs, becoming hunters might have been that thing that made us human to begin with, because we had first access to the organs, to these most nutrient dense parts of the animal. And so now in our culture today, we've found a way to kind of get them out of our diet. We started putting heftier price tags and prizing more of these, muscle meats. And now we're not doing it, but understanding like organs can be very valuable because of the nutrients they contain. And most people don't want to go out there and eat liver or even know how to source it. So finding a nice quality source in a convenient capsule is just a nice way to get around that.
I totally dig that. That is man, I've loved this. Craig, I've had you on here for almost 2 hours, brother. Let's attempt to land this plane here. Anything that nutritionally wise we didn't touch on that, man, we need to get out there for guys because they're just missing out.
Man, we didn't talk about, we kind of talked about ultra processed foods, but I can't emphasize enough, like just protein, getting that in and limiting ultra processed foods as much as we can and just eating more whole foods. And I think that's the biggest component.
Have a plan. Think about what you're doing when you're doing it. And, I'll be the first to admit that avoiding processed foods entirely in 2024 in a suburb of Cincinnati, at least, man, it's tough. It's tough to do that. And having the awareness of what you're doing, what's in it, and making the best choices you can with with the options available to you is really an excellent start. Right.
Yeah.
And hey, Craig, tell people where they can find you. Let's definitely talk about how people can find ancestral supplements. Where can people get a hold of this stuff?
I'm most active on Instagram, Craig_McCloskey. I put out some content there. Also, I work for Ancestral Supplements, and we're at Ancestral Supplements on Instagram, ancestralsupplements.com. I'm the head educator there. So we have a YouTube channel at Ancestral Wisdom, and I try to put out, weekly, bi-weekly, just masterclass episodes on any topic and regarding ancestral living and stuff like that. So that's where you can find us.
That's awesome. Huge fan. Definitely go check Craig out. Definitely go check out Ancestral Supplements. I got stuff around here somewhere. You can see on the back of his wall there, the bottles of Ancestral Supplements right there, to help you kind of visualize it when you show up on the site. And, finding some of those things for you, so outstanding. Craig, I'm sure we'll be seeing you again soon, brother. Everyone go give him a follow on Instagram. And until next time, man, talk to you later.
Appreciate you, Joey.